Okay, your father turning into a grotesque bug-like thing is probably a red flag that you should pay attention to on your journey to health and survival. Beating the mad imaginations in imaginary 2024. Let's go. Whatever we've just witnessed was just Jessica having a bad dream. She and her new husband Max, who has 2 kids, Taylor the older one and Alice the younger one, are about to move into Jessica's childhood home, also dubbed as her happy place. Needless to say that her happy place was never really happy. But as we all know, imaginations are often a source for comfort in dealing with past trauma. And for her, imagining her childhood home as a happy place seems to work pretty well. Just bad that the incoming red flags are therefore missed out on. The house is not yet finished. There's still construction work going on, and according to Jessica, still loads of caretaker stuff is lying around too, indicating that her father has some disability that needed or needs constant care. Despite all of that, they decide to move in a bit earlier than planned. Now let me explain the family dichotomy here. Jessica has married Max, a man with 2 daughters. Apparently his now ex-wife and the girl's mother has some form of mental illness that strained their relationship so much that only a divorce was the solution. This of course put a lot of stress on the family as a whole, but especially on the kids. And more on Taylor than Alice, since Taylor is 15 years of age and therefore more rationally aware of what is going on than Alice, who's picking up things more intuitively, like kids usually do. So the relationship between Jessica and Taylor is, well, as you'd expect, not that great. However, Alice, on the other hand, is open to Jessica as much as a young kid can be, as this scene proves. Upon moving into the house and picking out bedrooms for each character, it's revealed that Jessica is a children's book illustrator who enjoys quite a widespread acclaim. We also see one of her most prominent characters drawn on a canvas here, who we've also seen briefly at the start of the film in one of Jessica's nightmares. Guess that's the price for scaring the shit out of children. I remember my mother reading me the fairy tale of the little sucker thumb as a kid, including illustrations. A fairy tale where a creepy figure cuts off the thumbs of 2 little boys at night for sucking too much on their thumbs. Thanks, Mother. Anyway, this scene triggers Jessica and Alice to bond by playing a game, and for obvious reasons that game is, that's right, hide and seek. And where does the kid go look for Jessica? Correct, the dark black basement like every other 5-year-old would. There she finds an old dusty box with a stuffed teddy bear in that she immediately names Chauncey the bear. That's also when Jessica comes back home from the outside. Yeah, she wasn't even in the house to play hide and seek with her daughter, despite literally accepting to play the game a couple minutes ago.
Is it my turn to seek?
Good parenting right there. Luckily for her, Alice has already found a playing partner. Chauncey the bear, right there, on the chair behind her. Keep that in mind. Meanwhile, we cut to the 15-year-old who is busy taking selfies until she sees a creepy figure standing on her porch staring at her from the back. At least that's what she sees on the image. The moment she turns around, puff, there's nobody there. Things are getting interesting. As she rushes out to check who that was, she meets her neighbor Liam. The dysfunctional love interest of this film, he introduces Old Bag Patterson, as he calls her, the old lady across the street who Taylor saw on her selfie, claiming she wanted to buy their house and that she's a little odd. That's also when he invites Taylor to a bar nearby, saying they don't check on IDs. But Jessica doesn't like and interferes, which further alienates Taylor from her. Good parenting but bad relationship building. We then cut to evening in Jessica and Max's bathroom, from where they hear Alice talking to her new teddy bear upstairs. He has become her new imaginary friend. Guess the film's title finally plugs in. This results in the couple talking about how normal it is to have imaginary friends as a child, which strikes me as odd because nobody I knew has ever had any imaginary friends. Role-playing with a bunch of puppets is one thing, but imagining a real entity living alongside of you, not sure, folks, but that sounds suspicious, but perhaps the states are culturally different in that regard. I don't know, but feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts on that. A little while later, the two are surprised by Alice entering their room, claiming she's playing hide and seek with Chauncey, and as she hides in between them, it doesn't take long until a damp sound is heard, shrieking off Jessica, prompting her to ask her husband whether he heard anything at all, to which he replies, "Nope." Probably got issues with his hearing, because how could you not hear the only sound audible at night in your house, where opening a pack of chips would literally wake up the whole neighborhood? The camera then pans underneath the bed and we see Chauncey, probably? I don't know, it's way too dark to see anything really, but we get it. There's something off with the bear. The next morning, the couple is happy that Jessica's nightmare have stopped. They think that moving into her happy place did indeed solve the nightmares that had been haunting her for some time now. Little do they know that the storm is rarely felt in the eye of it and that this is literally where they are. As the next night arrives and Jessica's looking to bring Alice to bed, she looks for her in the basement. Go figure. Odd location to look for a 5-year, especially since she'll find her in her own room in just a moment. Inside the basement, Jessica goes through some of her old stuff and finds this. A drawing of a door with the tagline, "Never Ever" underneath. The box in which she finds it also reminds us of the box Alice found Chauncey, the teddy bear, in. Having found interesting memorabilia but not the actual thing she looked for, her daughter. She goes back up and to her surprise finds her, role-playing in her bedroom. Everything is fun and play until she hears a second voice that isn't one she recognizes. And if that wasn't enough, she also says that the bear says, "He is right behind you." Whatever that means. The moment Jess turns around, a white figure stumbles at her from inside Alice's room. It's the girl's mentally ill mother who had found her way into the house and decided to casually role-play a tea party with her 5-year-old at 10 p.m. I guess why not? But how did she enter in the first place and how did nobody notice that? Seems like anyone could just stumble in there, abduct a child, and vanish without anyone noticing. Not sure what the bigger red flag is, the mother or the fact that nobody noticed her. Not to mention that she must have escaped from her clinic, which should have absolutely prompted them to call Max to notify him about his ex-wife's disappearance and that she'll likely appear at his doorstep, because that's the most usual case, and everyone who had dealt with a mentally ill parent who needed psychiatric care can confirm that. Anyway, I guess it's better having the kid's mom coming for a surprise visit than a murderous teddy bear plotting the demise of the whole lineage. On the next day, 2 important things happen. First, Max decides to leave for work for a couple days, encouraged by his wife. Pretty bad timing if you ask me. And secondly, Jessica meets old bag Pedersen from across the street. It's revealed that she had been babysitting Jessica when she was but a kid, and tells her the story of how her dad would read her stories on the porch over there. She also reveals to us that apparently her father had a mental break upon her mother's death. This interaction triggers Jessica into paying her dad a visit, who is indeed a patient in a local caretaker home. As she sits down and tries to connect with him, she eventually starts to read a story of hers, thinking he would enjoy that. But the whole interaction escalates the moment he recognizes her. He reveals that nobody believed him when Jessica disappeared. However, Jessica replies that she never disappeared, she just went to live with grandma instead. However, this triggers her father even more, and he now talks about how she must stop talking to CB, that she always talked to CB. And apparently, there's a good reason why she should stop talking to CB, because he ends up almost breaking her arm. In any case, anyone who paid a minimum amount of attention to the story so far will immediately draw the connection to Chauncey the teddy bear, so clearly CB is an abbreviation for Chauncey Bear. This didn't click for Jessica yet though, and she just leaves more perplexed than she came. But that's alright, because she's about to gain some clarity. Meanwhile, Taylor's potential male love interest fulfills his 21st century duty and becomes dysfunctional quicker than you can spell toxic masculinity. He first proposes to trip on Molly, okay? Then shatters a whiskey bottle of Taylor's dad. And finally trips balls, or is he really, and meets CB. I guess that's how 2CB was invented. Anyway, it turns out the Molly was in fact just Liam's mother allergy pills. I guess that's the end of this love interest. But we did finally get to see some action. Took 45 minutes, but better late than never, especially now as we enter the actual fun part of the film. But before that, let's have a look at the red flags missed so far, and what should and could have been done by our characters. Well, firstly, for Max to disappear mere days after they moved into this new place, literally for the purpose of solving Jessica's mental problems, her nightmares, is ridiculous. Even if she says it's totally fine, Max should have realized that any trip away during this time is nonsense. I mean, just think about the kids. They basically lost their mom to mental illness, moved away from their home less than a week ago, and have to also deal with a quasi-stranger that is now their stepmom. Pretty bad timing to leave them if you ask me, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. Secondly, CB. Well, it was immediately clear to me the moment I heard CB that this must refer to Chauncey Bear. However, since everything points at Jessica having had tremendous childhood trauma, it may be forgiven that she can't draw a connection. Her mind is probably suppressing any perceptions that have anything to do with her past. And lastly, Liam. I mean, there are scarier things than autonomous towels pursuing you, so I'm glad this is not a major character others have to rely on. Dude's pretty useless, not gonna lie. But it would still make sense to tell others what you've experienced, especially since we found out that he wasn't high to begin with, so his experience actually gains plausibility unless he's a psychotic, which he doesn't appear to be. Now, the next major red flag is the list Jessica finds in Alice's bedroom. It's a checklist for certain items. 1. Something happy. 2. Something that burns. Red flag. 3. A bowl. 4. A paintbrush. 5. A lock of hair. 6. Something that scares you. 7. Something you get in trouble for. Red flag. 8. Something that makes you mad. 9. And something that hurts. Scarlet red flag. Yeah, pretty suspicious and definitely not a list you want to find in your child's bedroom. If it wasn't for the dark, sinister silhouette standing behind Jessica at this point, I'd be pretty disturbed by that list alone. Definitely a reason to keep an eye on your kids. However, that silhouette does raise some questions, especially since Chauncey said something about he is right behind you in the scene where the mom came for a visit. Who is he and what is Chauncey if not the same thing? In any case, this prompts Jessica to storm out and is just in time to prevent her daughter from high-fiving a rusty old nail. This triggers 2 new directions. First, Jess calls Max and tells him to come back. That's a good thing. And secondly, she calls in a therapist. But her visit comes with a huge surprise that is this movie's plot twist. As she installs a camera to film her interaction with Alice, she starts probing into her imaginary friend. They go through the whole story of the list and how it came to be, with Alice sitting with her back facing the therapist and literally imitating Chauncey's voice while the teddy bear was placed on the couch ahead. Everything is relatively normal as filming a conversation with an imaginary friend can be, until the situation escalates. Alice turns around and Chauncey's voice is still being heard, but her lips remain motionless. Time to call an exorcist if you ask me. Interestingly enough, Alice also mentioned the never ever. It's the second time we come across this name after having seen it scribbled down on a piece of paper by Jessica when she was a child. The therapist therefore consults with Jessica and goes over what just happened, believing Alice had taken up ventriloquism, the act of talking without your lips, which is funny to say the least. But once they sit down and go over all the facts, things take a dark turn. First, she shows Jessica a video of another child she worked with who also had an imaginary friend and who also hurt himself based on his imaginary friend's orders. Looks like bro sucked too hard on his thumb too. However, the point of this is that this boy went missing about a week after this recording. The therapist then goes on to share that she dealt with several kids with similar stories who all went missing. All had imaginary friends and all said that she would, in quotes, never ever understand. Just a phrase to exaggerate things to the therapist, Jessica draws the connection, storms downstairs, finds the scribbles, and takes them back up. She then says that the problem is the bear and that she must destroy it. Which has us, the audience, for the first time cheer because rarely do characters in horror films reach the right conclusions. However, that's when the therapist asks,
"What bear?"
Turns out that there is no bear and never was. To prove, she pulls up the footage from just before, and indeed, the bear we've seen on the couch was truly never there. And after asking even Taylor, it slowly dawns on her that she might be the crazy one here. Goosebumps. So Chauncey was truly always ever imaginary and never truly there. So both Alice and Jessica were tripping. Good to know. But what next? Well, it's time to enter the never ever because meanwhile Alice has disappeared and entered herself. Note to myself, get a children leash. They stumble over a secret room in the basement with blood splashes at the wall. Guess Alice finally found something that hurts. While both are looking for her in the physical realm, including the police, Taylor eventually says that children don't just disappear, which reminds Jessica of her interaction with her dad, who also said that she had disappeared when she was a kid. And as we know, she thinks she just went to live with grandma. But now for the first time she starts realizing that this may not have been the case and that something much more sinister must have taken place. She tries to convey that to Taylor but obviously comes across like a complete nutcase, prompting the teenager to storm off. This is when she returns home and tries to deconstruct her childhood memories by scribbling stuff onto the walls, while Taylor gets picked up by the old lady from across the street who finally comes clean with everything she knows. A bit late, but better late than never. So apparently Alice and Jessica both were abducted by spirits who could get a hold of them more easily, since both kids tried to fill their emotional needs by attaching them too much to the spirits, aka the imaginary friends. Both kids suffered losses and therefore compensated for that with a too strong of a connection to those spirits, who then eventually turned evil. Now we fast forward to the trio meeting up again in Jessica's house. The scribblings she performed on the wall of her old room was actually about tracing back the lines of the scribblings she made as a kid. It turns out that she had written her checklist Chauncey the bear gave her on this wall. Now what she's done here is actually pretty smart. By tracing back the lines, she revealed a big piece of the mystery surrounding this murderous bear. Because now, comparing her checklist with the one Alice wrote reveals that they are identical, meaning both are prerequisites necessary to enter the Never Ever, where the bear holds those kids hostage. So they collect all things necessary, prepare them in a bowl, stab Jessica's hand to fulfill the pain requirement, and nothing happens. That's when she starts gaslighting Taylor, telling her that she's the reason for Alice's disappearance and that she should be ashamed of herself. Apparently, this hurt Jessica more than Taylor, who now sparked up a blue flame instead, prompting a shiny portal to appear. The door to the Never Ever. Now, I don't know about y'all, but opening the spirit realm 15 minutes after you've discovered it, literally without any means to protect yourselves, is pretty reckless and probably not recommended. Sure, Alice is in danger and must be rescued as quickly as possible. However, the spirits have home advantage and are, well, spirits. If I had to go in there without having had the time to research how I could fight those things if push comes to shove, I would at the very least resort to basic supernatural-esque tools like salt, silverware, amulets, crosses, holy book passages with exorcisms, etc. And I definitely wouldn't wander in there like these three sheiks do. However, admittedly, the Never Ever does look pretty sick. Once they step inside, they find themselves in a huge world, full of symbols and creatures found inside the human imagination. And after stumbling around for a while, finding literal windows into their pasts, the old lady eventually walks over to the portal where they came from, pulls away the blockage they had installed, and ensures the way back home is no more, trapping them all inside. Apparently, she had been controlled by Chauncey herself. Nice. I haven't seen a villainous old lady in a film for a while. I mean, listen to her yourself.
We can be young here.
Looks like Grandma forgot to take her pills today, didn't she? Well, looks like she miscalculated the good nature of those beings residing in this realm. She is promptly taken out by a hairy arm dragging her into who knows where, and our two main girls end up on their own. But only for a short moment, because the next thing that happens is Alice running around, laughing like she's having a blast, as if a child abducted by a murderous teddy bear would do that. But for some reason, Taylor doesn't seem to be able to think straight and runs right after her, following her sister into a dark room, because that's clearly the best course of action right now. And sure enough, the door closes behind her, changing its nature at the same time, displaying a completely different world behind it when Jessica opens it. Great, here we go again. Needless to say that splitting up is always the worst thing anyone could do when trapped in a hostile spirit world, but okay. Inside the room, Taylor finds a disfigured Alice doing creepy stuff until she vanishes. She's then finally attacked by the bear before she's rescued at the last minute by Jessica dragging her out of the room using a paper door. The two decide to stick together now and scavenge the place until they come across a room which resembles the girls' old apartment where they lived with their real parents. This is also where they find young Alice playing in her room, enjoying literally everything she could have ever imagined. Which is a good place to add a little bit of context. Since this is the imagination realm, pretty much everything can exist. It's pretty obvious, but this scene particularly helps Taylor and Jessica figure it out. If all imagination can be real, you basically can create whatever you wish for. So it goes without saying that you could simply imagine a tool or weapon to fight off Chauncey the bear. Now this is not exactly what's going to happen, but certainly a way to figure out how to survive and beat this sick bear. The girls are then surprised by their real mom being in this room as well, indicating that this is Chauncey himself since their mom didn't enter with them, and therefore can only be imagined. After some small talk, Jessica understands the power of this realm and proceeds painting a new portal onto the wall, trying to create a way out. It works out just moments after Chauncey revealed himself looking genuinely creepy now. The kids are able to escape while Jessica needs the last word and tries confronting her childhood friend for one final time. Now, this is probably not necessary and just adds unnecessary risk. But on the other hand, if you want to beat your trauma once and for all, confronting it may be the only real way of doing that. This ends up in Jessica being trapped in one more time, trying to escape the now giant bear through the maze of the Never Ever. She eventually makes it to the original portal and pries open the door using the scissors she had been holding on to, escaping the grip of her childhood friend once and for all. I guess if we learn one thing here is that one might escape his past, but one can ever be truly free of it if one doesn't confront it head on, which can be dangerous and painful and potentially even end up with death. If it wasn't for the help of all others, the kids particularly, Jessica probably couldn't have done this herself. So while it's important to confront one's past, one should always prepare for a big fight and should find real friends who will aid oneself on this path. And with that said, my friends, thanks for watching and I will see you again next week.